Hey guys, criminal defense attorney Ryan Pacyga here, and I'm going to talk about the differences between domestic assault and disorderly conduct in Minnesota. So let's set up the scenario first. Husband and wife get into a really loud argument at home, and there's a teenager there at home, and there's never any hands put on each other. They don't push each other, they don't hit each other, but the argument gets really loud. Teenager gets scared and calls police. Law enforcement shows up. They separate husband and wife. They ask them both questions, and then they ask the teenager questions, and they arrest usually the husband for domestic assault. Wife says, I don't want him going to jail. I didn't even call police, and he never hit me. He never did anything to me. We just got in a really bad argument. And the police say, listen, we've got a policy here. We arrest someone for domestic assault under these circumstances, and we're going to get him out of the house. We don't want him coming back tonight, so we're going to take him to jail. So they arrest him, they take him down to jail. He sits a day or two before he gets in front of a judge. You've been charged, the husband is charged with domestic assault. And in addition to that, the judge orders what's called a domestic abuse no contact order. Now, husband can't go back home after he bails out of jail or he's released from jail. The no contact order doesn't allow it. He can't call his wife, he can't text his wife, and he can't go back home. And he's told that if he violates any of those things, he could be brought right back to jail for violating the no contact order. Wife wants husband home. She feels really bad about this argument they've had. He feels bad about the argument they've had, but they can't even figure out a way to get through this because they're not allowed to talk to one another for fear that he'll go back to jail if he's seen back at the house or even if he's texting or calling her. So there they are apart from one another, and he's renting a hotel or staying at his elderly parents' house, or he's staying at a friend's house. And there we have it. And now he's got a court date after he's been released. He's got another court date 2, 3, 4 weeks down the road. He's got to hire a lawyer. And here he is, domestic assault. And perhaps the prosecutor also charges him with what's called disorderly conduct. What's the difference here and what can be done? Well, that we see these situations all the time. I've been doing this for 20 years. And in these situations, it's really hard because husband wants to be able to see his daughter or their children at home. In addition, maybe the family doesn't have a lot of money to be able to paying for two places to live now, a hotel room or renting an apartment or whatever, in addition to the house payment that they're already making. And these things get hard. So under Minnesota law, again, we're not talking about where someone's actually hit or pushed or anything like that, just a loud argument. Under Minnesota law, someone can be charged with domestic assault if they engage in behavior that causes fear of bodily harm or does cause bodily harm. So if you say something like, if you do that again, I'll hit you, and someone's afraid by that, they can be charged with domestic assault, fear of bodily harm. Okay. And police don't always get this right. And sometimes people, when they're angry, will say things that didn't really happen. But it depends. And of course, other times, of course, there really are incidents of what you would think of as domestic assault where someone's getting hit or something like that. But under these circumstances where there's yelling, okay, fear of bodily harm, you can be charged with domestic assault for that and disorderly conduct. And disorderly conduct is either brawling or fighting, but also engaging in words that would tend to reasonably alarm or anger or cause resentment in others if you're really noisy or boisterous or anything like that. So that's disorderly conduct. And you can be charged with both crimes for this yelling back and forth at each other in the house during a verbal argument scenario. Well, what do you do in that situation? Let me tell you, one is way worse than the other. Let's start with domestic assault, which is way worse. Domestic assault, if you plead guilty or are found guilty of that, a whole bunch of what are called collateral consequences can happen. What are those? Those are things that happen in addition to just being guilty of this, such as, one, if you have a domestic assault on your record and you get another domestic assault charge up to 10 years later, you can be charged with a more severe form of domestic assault because these are enhanceable. Think of like DWIs. Each one gets worse in a 10-year period. Domestic assaults are that way as well. So that's one thing to watch out for. Another thing, if you're found guilty or plead guilty to domestic assault, you can't own or possess firearms or ammunition. No hunting. No gun at home for self-protection. And a conceal and carry, you can probably kiss that goodbye as well. So those are some of the consequences. In addition to that, social services might get involved, and now you're risking whether or not you can be around your children, at least unsupervised for a while. Moreover, it's hard to volunteer for things like be a youth sports coach, or think of scouts or other volunteer activities where you're working with children, or you want to participate in chaperoning at their school, whether it's recess or trips or things like that. In addition to that, employment. Some employers will fire you if you have a domestic assault conviction. Other employers won't hire you if you have a domestic assault conviction. And other places won't let you live there. So if you want to move into an apartment complex or a townhome situation, or a gated community, any of those sorts of things, a lot of times those places with a background check, if you have a domestic assault conviction, will not let you live there. So those are just some of the collateral consequences that can come with domestic assault. Disorderly conduct, same sort of conduct to a degree, but this is really, you're pleading guilty in that situation to yelling really loud or something noisy, causing resentment in others or alarm in others. That's different because you don't have those same collateral consequences. You can still own or possess firearms. You can still usually keep a job or get future jobs. You can still live in apartment buildings or other places that might keep you out. All of those things that I said just happen with domestic assaults usually don't happen with a disorderly conduct. So if you have to plead guilty to something, it's much better. Now, just because you're charged with disorderly conduct or domestic assault doesn't mean you're guilty of it. Sometimes we can get those charges dismissed. A good lawyer can do that sometimes. Other times, no matter who you have as a lawyer, all the charges aren't going to be dismissed. And instead, there's a disagreement about what happened, or a prosecutor or police don't believe what the witnesses are saying, and they want to push forward with a trial anyway. And then you go to trial if you want to. And you can let a jury or judge decide if you're guilty of disorderly conduct or domestic assault. And then, of course, sometimes there's plea negotiations that happen. And a lot of times we've had people who are charged with a domestic assault that are willing to agree. They say, hey, I didn't assault anybody. I didn't cause any fear of anybody, but I am guilty of disorderly conduct. I got out of hand that day, and I was really loud and just went off the handle, and I'm guilty of at least that, but I don't want a domestic assault on my record. So those are things, every case is unique, that you should talk with an experienced lawyer about, and get representation so that you can try to protect your record as much as you can, your earning capacity, and be able to do the things you love, whether that's being in your home with your family, volunteering in your children's activities, keep the job you have, or be able to choose where you want to live versus have a lot of doors closed because of a prior conviction. If you have more questions about disorderly conduct or domestic assault, I'm criminal defense attorney Ryan Pacyga. We can be helpful in those situations, but we'll give you an honest opinion about how we think we can be helpful. You can find me at arrestedmn.com. That's like arrestedminnesota.com, arrestedmn.com, or call me at 612-339-5844.